Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today something just a little bit different. We're going to take a trip through time, look at the history of Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now this is a video that the Microsoft Flight Simulator team put together yesterday it was, so make sure you go and check out their channel. But first of all, hey, thank you very much for all the support recently, really appreciate it. And if you can continue to smash the thumbs up down below, that would be really fantastic. And also, if you're new, how about consider subscribing? It costs nothing at all, except just a little bit of self-respect. And let's be honest, who's not willing to give up some of that? So what we're going to do is let's go through, take a look at these different versions. Let me know down in the comments, what was your favorite version of Microsoft Flight Simulator? I'll let you know mine when we get to it. And with that said, let's take a look. And the first thing you'll notice as we get into this video is that familiar music playing in the background. Now I'll just pause this up. I'm going to pause from time to time through the video as we take a closer look at some of these versions. But here we are in 1982. This is nearly 40 years ago. Hard to believe. 1.0. As you can see here, black and white. Not on the runway center line, by the way. And that's a consistent theme throughout this video, I notice. But you do have a sort of very basic 2D panel. And I tell you what, when this came out, I would imagine that it was pretty popular. And flight enthusiasts would have been absolutely loving it. So obviously we've come a long way since Flight Simulator 1.0. Well, it's a bit janky, isn't it? Look at it. Yeah, frame rates aren't the best. Slightly better than FSX. Oh, I didn't say that. You can't say that. Here goes 2.0. Suddenly we're into colour. We're into that. I think it's 8 colours from memory, or maybe 4. We've even got radios all tuned over here as we head into Flight Simulator 3.0, 1988. So this is 6 years later. Hold on, I'll just pull it back a bit. And as you can see here, we're starting to be able to identify the scenery that we're flying in. San Francisco right here, all the radios tuned. I wonder if these actually, if these radios worked and you could actually fly approaches and all that sort of stuff. You probably could. I'd have to have a look. You got your flap indicator, gear, carb heat even, transponder. So yeah, quite detailed in 1988, although not amazing graphics, will be fair to say, but once again this would have been a massive step compared to the previous version. As we move into Flight Simulator 4.0, just the looks like a year later, so doesn't look like a massive amount of change right here. That looks like a Cessna 172 or something. 1993, we're into the jets right here. We'll pause this up. Suddenly we're into a much better quality 2D cockpit, and this is quite a big jump in quality from the previous version, which came out 4 years before. We've got the radios once again. We've got working dials right here. I don't think it was an interactive panel at all, but what you are seeing here is obviously a much better quality skybox compared to previous versions. We've got a bunch of different colors. Once again, not lined up in the center runway, so I'm not too sure who was flying all these flights. Yeah, so definitely a massive upgrade just 4 years later. And boom, there we go. Not straight, but hey, let's not be too judgmental. As we get into 1995, and you're seeing autogen scenery starting to appear here. You've got the 3D buildings, a much better representation, a 3D model of the aircraft. So yeah, still, I mean, obviously compared to what we're used to now, it's definitely not that great, but you're starting to get some recognizable landmarks over there. You'll see one very soon as we fly past. It looks like the one of those, is it an extra or something similar like that? And we've got mixture over here and the throttle, etc. As we get into 1997, and yeah, the models have improved once again. This is old school ortho type scenery, but not quite. Not a huge upgrade right here, although I think the C teachers do look a little better. We're going to pause it right here, everybody. This is Flight Simulator 2000. This is where I started to get into the game. And I remember I spent a lot of time in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2000. And now back then, obviously it was a CD that you would get. And then as the versions come out, there was more and more CDs. But I remember with these versions back then, you used to get a really decent manual. And it was like 1/2 inch thick, something like that. 1.5 centimeters, something like that. And it was basically, it was like a tutorial basically on how to do everything in the game. And it was written, I think, by Rod Machado, who was the flight instructor that used to do the internal tutorials and stuff like that. And it's quite funny when you read through it. It's got a whole lot of little dad jokes and stuff like that in it. But I learned so much from this game. This is where I learned how to fly, and it really got me passionate about flying. And ultimately, I ended up doing my pilot's license on the back of playing this game. But I really, the mission, I spent a lot of time when I first got it just going through the tutorials, spit it out, and just learning about the game and learning how to fly. And it was really fantastic. And it's when I first got into virtual airlines and all that sort of stuff. So a really fantastic version. And let's just play this video right here, continue on. And of course the Concorde. Now I think from memory they released a professional version of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2000, and the Concorde was on the cover. And of course, tragedy with the Concorde some years later. 2002. Okay, once again, look at this approach. We've got a question who's piloting these aircraft. But although the top of the overhead panel's looking a little bit janky, I mean obviously we're seeing a much better quality internal cockpit right here. Now, an interesting story around Flight Simulator 2002, as I've paused it and it's nice and blurry, so you're welcome. I remember it was getting close to being released. It was certainly being promoted, and then obviously the tragic events of September 11th, 2001 happened. And I remember, I can't remember if they delayed the game, but they definitely had to go back and they removed the Twin Towers out of the game. I remember that. Someone can Google it and let me know in the comments, but I can't remember if it was delayed, but they definitely changed the scenery because of what happened on September 11th, 2001. So yeah, interesting story around that. It was released in 2001, I believe, as he comes in, and this looks like a 747 or something. There we go, 747. And he hasn't got much runway to work with, whatever. But yeah, look, definitely an upgrade, and we've got the blending of the sky as we get into my favourite version, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2004. I'm just going to pause it up here. It was a century of flight, so you got the Wright brothers aircraft right here, and to me this was my favorite version thus far for several reasons. One is that it ran really well. It was really well optimized, and so you got really good frame rates. The second thing was that there was a bunch of different add-ons you could get for this game. You could for previous versions, but particularly for this one, that made it really good really easily. There was 2 add-ons. They were both freeware. One was for the sky and for clouds and for the lighting and all that sort of stuff. And one was for ground environment, and I'm talking about runways, aprons, all that sort of stuff. And so what happened was you put those 2 add-ons in, and suddenly it just came to life, and it was a really, really good game. I played a lot on this, and in fact, I went back to it several times after getting really frustrated with FSX, which was a temperamental bloody program. Anyway, we'll play this through. So, yeah, for me thus far, this has been my favourite Microsoft Flight Simulator. Look at him flying around here. Not very high, really, isn't it? But that's where it all started, although there's conjecture. Then we go into FSX, and I'm going to pause this right here. This is the version that I've absolutely spent the most time in, and it's not just because it's 14 years old. That's probably got something to do with it. But you take a look at this massive jump in base level default graphics. The water textures, obviously, reflective water textures make a huge difference. Although anyone who's played this game knows you put the slider up to max with water textures, and it absolutely kills your frame rates. Unoptimized piece of what. Anyway, so it's got Skybox is much better, and I mean this really was a big jump. And I think if you look at the way the third-party developers really embraced this game, the likes of Orbix with your scenery, Mega Scenery X for your photorealistic scenery, and then you got the likes of Aerosoft, Caronado, all those different third-party add-on providers, and when it went well, it was amazing. But it took a lot of tweaking, and anyone who had an NVIDIA card would know about Nick N's tweaks. You had to go into NVIDIA Inspector and make all these tweaks just so it would run nicely. And every time you got a video card update, it would totally reset all your settings. So that was blimmin' annoying. But when it went well, it was amazing. But when it wasn't, it would crash your system and do all sorts of blimmin' things. So yeah, Microsoft Flight Simulator X. I mean, obviously it came out with the acceleration add-on and stuff like that. But yeah, look at this. You've got some nice looking scenery there. And yeah, I mean, when it worked well, it was really nice. and I certainly spent many hours. And here we are right now, ladies and gentlemen. Flight Simulator 2020, just a few days left, and we are into it. You little ripper. And I mean, well, nothing compares. I mean, here we are now at Flight Sim 2, where are we, 246. And let's go right back in history. And look at this. Have we not come a long way? Admittedly, it's 40 years, but there we go. 40 years of technology. And this is where we are. Amazing. And just, I think, you know, you look at the hype around this. I certainly was skeptical when this game was first announced, and as time goes by, I'm feeling more and more comfortable that it is going to deliver a really good experience. I think looking through all the videos that I've watched so far, I mean, you do have to have a decent rig to get the really amazing graphics, but not an unbelievable rig. And I think there's a little bit of work to do in some of the aircraft systems, but I think those third-party developers coming in and making sort of study level aircraft will take care of that. But yeah, here it is, ladies and gentlemen, less than a week away, and we will get our grubby little mitts on this amazing program, Flight Sim 2020. But there we go, a history of Flight Simulator, everybody. What's your favourite version? I mean, this one coming up could well automatically suddenly become everyone's favourite version. We're going to have to see. But for me, Flight Simulator 2004. Let me know down below what yours is. But hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. Remember, smash the like button down below. And if you're new, you know, how about consider subscribing? Fantastic. Have a good one, everybody. Take it easy.